Hi everyone, it's Nat here. Hope you're all doing well. I am on for my day, which is day 3 of the hashtag DD Advent 2024. So this is the Christmas collaboration that is hosted by the lovely Tracie Fox. So there is a calendar, which I've linked in the description, which is an advent calendar, which is really cool. So you can click on the day and that will take you to the video of the person who is creating that day. So for the month, we will be using the Christmas Anthology kit put out by Tracie. Now, the kit's a little different. There are a set of stories that go along with it. And then there are digitals that go with each of the stories. But of course, you can mix and match those as well. Now, Tracie's lovely husband, Jay, has written the story, which is very cool. And they've put a lot of work into this one. It is huge. So, of course, I will link the kit down below in case you want to go and have a look. There are also some freebies, background freebies, that are available on Tracie's website, which I'll link below as well. So, if you want to have an idea of how to use the kit, it's good to go over to Tracie's video, which I will link, her release video, so you can have a look at the kit and get some ideas. She's put out a few videos as well. You can make a massive journal with it, or you can do separate journals with each of the stories, or you can just make ephemera with the digitals and mix them up as much as you want. It's heaps versatile and loads of fun. So make sure you do head on over and check out each of the day's creators. I'm sure that will be much appreciated. So for the first week's story, it is Christmas at the Cottage. For the first week's story, we see 2 kids, Ruby and Alistair, who are left at a family friend's for the days before Christmas while their mum's away at work. Now, I won't go into any more detail. You should pop on over and check out the story yourself. Tracie does have a video of the story being narrated, which is really cool, which has just come out as it is the first week. So I got to thinking of how sort of lonely and boring it would be if that happened to me as a child, and what would I do with my time. And I thought I'd probably write a letter to Santa. You know, a lot of children do that prior to Christmas, write their letter off to Santa saying what they'd like, and I'm sure that Ruby and Alistair would like their mum home for Christmas. So I was thinking how I would incorporate a letter into whatever I was going to make. And then looking at the kit, there were a lot of rectangle pieces that reminded me of postcards. So I thought I'd roll with that and make postcards. And then I thought I'd do a little thing to put the postcards in. And then I decided to do a postcard book because I have some old postcard books here. And I had a look at those and thought, well, why not try something like that? So this is what I have come up with. We'll have a really quick look now, and then we'll have a closer look at it at the end. And then I will get into showing you how I made it in case you'd like to make one yourself. Now, it is quite big and thick. I would suggest if you made this whole thing that it would fit into the journal if there's enough room in your front or back cover before the pages or whatever. You'd be able to fit it into a nice loose fabric pocket there or something like that. Or you could make it a lot thinner if you don't do all the stuff I did. So otherwise, some of yous or a lot of yous are probably just doing December dailies and that. So you might like to just take on 1 or 2 of the ideas or something to put in your journal. So I hope in some way or another this does give you some inspiration. I had piles of fun making it. So we just open it up like this. And we can open it up. And then inside we do have some tags, which we'll have a look at afterwards. There's a journal card in the front too, which we'll have a look afterwards, but it does just open up like that. So you've got 4 postcards at the front, and then you can open it up that way, and you've got 4 postcards there as well. Well, it's like 2 postcards on each side, and then the backgrounds on each side. So something a little different for me. A lot of fun to make, but it had me thinking because I didn't do a prototype. I get bored if I make something like this and then I have to make it again. So I just hope that things are going to stamp okay in that. And it was all right. Could have been worse. So first of all, I'm giving you a quick flick of probably most of the pages that I'm using. I did 2 copies of that one with the cards that I used for postcards. I did use a couple of the journal pages in the Christmas at the Cottage kit pieces. Then I used these sort of journal cards as well, and I ended up printing those out twice. Used some of the ephemera pieces, and with some of them I did scale them down a little bit. And then these are a couple of the freebie backgrounds in the members area on Tracie's website. There's a whole pile on there, but I just printed out 3. Then I'm going to use some green cardstock. Then I've got some more of the journal pages there, because at that stage I wasn't sure what I was doing. There's a few more ephemera pages as well. So I just grabbed some that appealed to me, and then I thought, what am I going to do? Grabbed some green cardstock when I decided that I wanted to make my little case. So my first job is to cut down a piece of my green cardstock. So I'm leaving it full length and then cutting the width at 5 1/4 inches. Then I'm scoring it at 1.5, and then 1/8 either side of that 1.5 mark. Then scoring it again at 5.5, and then again I go 1/8 either side of that. And then I'm scoring it at 9 1/4. Now the 9 1/4 is just to help me know where to cut it off. So now I'm doing a sharp fold on the outer scores, and then the middle score I'll just do a gentle fold, pressing it up against my ruler there. I'm making a little sort of envelope pocket that can hold my postcards, so it needs a bit of room in it. So the back and front are just a little bit bigger than what my postcards will be, just to give me plenty of room. So I do trim just a smidgen off of the back piece that flips up there, just so it tucks in nicely under the top. So now I've got a couple of the journal pages, just taking the white outer piece off there. I want to cut 4 pieces to back my postcards with, and I want them to be quite plain so that they're good for writing on, like the back of a postcard. So I'm cutting these down to the same width and height of the journal cards that I cut out. So that's 4 15/16 by 3 1/4 inches. Now that might vary those measurements depending on your printer and everything. So just measure your journal cards, make the back the same, and make sure that the front and back of your envelope piece are just a little bit bigger. Just checking that they fit there, and I realise that I have cut mine just a little bit big, so just correct that. I'm so bad at measuring stuff. So now I can trim down the journal cards, which of course will be the front of my postcards. So I've got 4 of the fronts and then 4 of the backs now. I'm cutting out a couple of the baubles from this ephemera sheet. I want to use them for the closure for my little envelope storage. So I'm cutting the top of the baubles off because I'm not going to use that. I will be punching circles out of these. So first I want to back them onto some of my leftover green cardstock. They need to be quite sturdy for a closure. So I stick them down and I ensure that the glue is completely dry before I try punching them out. Now you'll note that I do leave a bit extra cardstock on one side so that it helps me hold them when I want to put them into my punch. I'm forever cutting things too small and then I can't hold them in the punch. So the first one I punched out of 1 3/8 circle punch. The second one I think is about 1 inch. Just checking that they'll fit on the flap there okay. In the end it does hang over a little bit, but that doesn't really matter. So I've got these nice journaling spots as well from the kit. And I know that I want one for the front of my envelope. So I'll just cut that out ready for when I want to use it. And I decide that I will put one on the back of my envelope as well. So I'm just trying to find one that goes with the enclosures that I've got. The first one I thought didn't really go very well with them. This one goes much better. So I end up putting those to the side to work on later, and we'll get on with our postcards. So as I mentioned at the start, I did print 2 of each of these out so that I could have a bit of a play with them. And I decide with these blue ones that I want to cut out the frame and try and make sort of shaker postcards. I chose some cardstock there that I thought goes with each of the blue journal cards. And I'm going to adhere the 2 pieces of cardstock together to make them double height. So hopefully I've got enough room for things to move around in my shaker card or shaker postcard. So I'll do that with both of the bits of cardstock for my postcards. Now I've got some washi tape here which I'm just folding over on itself. I'm using tiny little bits because I want to adhere the frame of my picture down temporarily to the cardstock. I'll also adhere the middle section to it, but I just want to cut the frame out. Now I don't want to glue it down permanently yet, that's why I'm using the washi tape. So then I can stick my picture down, and when I cut the middle of the picture out of the frame will still stick and make it easy to cut out. It won't be moving around while I'm trying to cut it. So cut the outside bits off first. Then I grab my little knife and use that to carefully cut the inside picture out of the frame. And that will leave me with the double cardstock in the frame shape, as well as the frame around the picture. And I know that they'll fit together nicely because I cut them out all together. I think that was method in the madness there. So I haven't managed to cut completely through every section of the cardstock, but I've gone through the paper all right. So I'm just peeling the paper off, and then I'll cut the rest of the bits out of the cardstock after recycling some of my washi tape there for the next picture that I have to do this with. So I can just peel the frame off from the picture now. That's all ready. Just going to remove all the washi tape, which was a bit tedious. And it's going to fit nicely around the initial picture. So now I just need to cut the little bits that haven't, the corners always get stuck in there and you've got to go around them again. So I'm just doing that carefully to get the frame out of my cardstock. And that will just give me the height I need. So of course I have to repeat that process with my other journal card that I want to do. Next I'm on to the backgrounds for my postcards. So I have the Tim Holtz postcard stamp set here, and I'm using a few different ones of those. I'm using 4 for my 4 backgrounds. just using distress ink to apply that, and then I'm going over it with embossing powder. Now, they're all different powders and some of them are quite old, and because I'm using distress ink, it's not really wet, so not a lot of the powder sticks, but it worked out really good because I didn't want it to be really bright and bold. So it's very, very subtle, but I really loved the way it turned out. So I'm using blue for it's meant to be for the background of my two bluish postcards, and then red and green for the other ones. But then I realised that these won't be going on the back of the blue cards. They'll be going on the same side as the blue cards, or else it will look weird. You'll see what I mean when I put it all together. So, of course, once I've got the powder on, I use my heat tool to melt the powder and create the embossed effect. So as you can see, it's not perfect stamping and it's not very solid embossing, but that's the distress inks, and I really like the way it turned out. Here I go with some red. So red distress ink, and then I think I've got a cranberry embossing powder there. And with my green, I couldn't find any green embossing powders, so I'm using an embossing glaze. I've never used that before. I don't know if much of that stuck to my ink there, although the colour did look a little bit different. I have to play around with it more using my VersaFine ink in the future. So I thought I'd drag out my plethora of Christmas stamps that I've collected there, and I chose 4 that I thought would go with the colours that I'm using in this project. And I ink around them with the same inks that I'm using for the postcard title. Also ink around the edges of the backgrounds here. I went too heavy with the green ink on the first stamp that I inked, so I'm just finding another one. I just wanted it really light just on the edges. Didn't want to take it in much. Decisions. And of course I just use my tacky glue to stick the stamps down. So I'm using Helmar tacky glue and then the Helmar fabric glue for this project. Next, I decide I might as well grab some of my rarely used Christmas stencils. So this is a Kaiser Craft bauble stencil here. I had trouble getting into all the little bits there. So I had to go over it like 2 more times. Still didn't really like the outcome of this one, but it's all right. Doesn't have to be perfect. So I've got a couple of stencils that I grabbed from the second-hand store. They're like kiddie stencils, but I really love grabbing them, and you never know when they're going to come in handy, and I quite like the way this one worked out. It's another one from the second-hand shop with snowflakes on it. Thought that would be nice with some blue ink. And then these This is just cardstock that I've punched snowflakes out of before, and I use it as a stencil. So this is a global land set of stamps that I grabbed this postmark out of. Just using that on over the top of all of the stamps that I put on my backgrounds. And then I think the backgrounds are pretty well done. So now we're on to our frames for our shakers. So just making sure to ink around the outside and the inside of the window there. I'm using blue ink for these blue ones, and I use red and green for my other ones. I just grab this little makeup applicator sponge to get the ink into the corners there, because it's always hard to get it in there. So I've got some transparency here. You could just use acetate or packaging or something if you wanted to, but I had a bit of scrap, so I thought I'd use it up. I'm tracing around my frames just so I know how big to cut the acetate windows out. So trace around both of those, and then I've got to cut them out. So I'm cutting inside of the lines so that the window ends up just a bit smaller than the outside of the frames. So then I decide I would do some embossing with white embossing powder just over some of the snow pieces. So I want this to be really subtle as well. So I'm using my Distress marker. Distress embossing marker, I think that's a Ranger product. Just to add some highlights, and then I tip my powder on. I'm doing it on the roof there, just where the bright snow is a little bit. I thought if I make it real solid, it's going to look weird, so I thought just some little plops of snow would be nice. And of course I have to heat emboss that as well. And of course I have to use my heat gun to melt the powder again. You might be able to see just a little bit of glimmer there in a few spots when I hold it up. Really like the way that turned out, just adds something a little bit extra interest. So again, ink around the edges. I figure I might as well show you where I ink, just in case you do follow along with any of it. Just don't want to see the whiteness. I'm adding glue around the frame area of the base picture there to add the cardstock frame pieces on top. Just checking which way my top piece fits the most neat. And then I will add my transparency to the top picture piece. So again, just apply the glue around the frame piece and then lay the transparency down on top. Now, this is printable transparency, so one side's sort of matte while the other side's glossy. So the glossy side I've got up and the matte I've got down, and I'm hoping that the matte will stop the bits that I put in there sticking to it, because you do tend to get static, and I'm hoping the mat might help that. So I just hunted in my little sequin book there to see what sequins I had at hand, and found some really good sized stars. So I thought I would grab extra of those and put them in. And then I've got some chunky glitter there, silver glitter, so I'm using some of that. And then I had these little shaker ball things that had spilt in the packaging, so I thought I'd dip some of them in as well. Then again, I lay some glue around my cardstock frame there, and then I can apply the frame with the transparency on top. So sticking down the cardstock there helps create your well to put all your shaker pieces in. Then we're just finishing off by adding the transparency with the picture on top. And then what I always do, which I shouldn't, is shake it to see if it works. But of course the glue's not dry, so it's a stupid thing to do, because if there's glue oozing out the edges, all your shaker piece is going to stick to it. But it worked, so that's good. So I repeat all those processes again with this second blue journal card. Here I am just adding the transparency again. So I'm looking through my sequin book again, and I find some sort of iridescent-like sequins, which I love. And then I also find similar style little shaker balls and some pearl shaker balls. So I thought I'd put them in this one. I didn't buy anything for this project. I just rated what I had. So what I did was print 2 to a page of the ephemera page that had the nutcrackers on, so that they come up a bit smaller. And I'm just inking around those after I fussy cut them out, and I want to put them on the outside of my frame and transparency there, just to finish off my shaker postcards. So when you're applying your glue, you want to make sure it's one that's going to dry clear, and you want to try really hard not to get any on your transparency, because if you try and wipe it off, it just smears and smudges on it. So be mindful of that when you're sticking your frames together, that you don't overdo it with the glue and have it all seeping out everywhere. Now, I fussy cut a whole lot of pieces that I want to use for my 2 other journal cards that I'm making. I fussy cut out the frames from the pictures that are on the walls. There were 2 pictures on each of the walls of those journal cards. So I cut the picture out of them and then cut the frame out. I want to do a similar thing here. I want to add my transparency, so I'm cutting down some of my scrap transparency. This is a bit fiddly, but it was easy enough, just so it fits into the frames there. And again, I will apply glue around the back of the frames and add my transparency to them. Of course, after I've inked the inside and the outside. Must not forget. I used to always forget to ink the inside of my windows and then stick transparency down and then try to ink it afterwards. Does not work very well. So yes, wee bit fiddly. Definitely need the tweezers for this one. So I do blot the glue with my fingers so that it's not too thick, so it's not oozing out onto my transparency. Although because I do that with my fingers, I've got glue on my fingers, which makes it easy to get on the transparency. So now I'm applying just a thin coat of glue around the frame on the picture, so I can add the frame that we've just put together over the top. Again, it's just adding a bit of interest, making it stand out a little bit more. So I'll do that for my other postcard as well. Then I have a few other bits that are fussy cut out, like the bedspreads and the curtains and the lampshade in one of the pictures. I'm going to do similar thing with those as well, but I'm using some scrap book page here. Rather than wasting any cardstock and that, I'm just using some scrap. I think it's Edith Holden scrap. And I'm just applying that to certain areas on these pieces just to lift them off the background just a little bit. It just gives a bit of dimension. So ink around all the pieces, and I'm using my vintage photo for these bits. Then I can stick down my little lifter pieces. Then I can overlay them on the curtains on the background picture. And then I do a similar thing with the bedspread. Just lift some of the areas. So it's quite a big tutorial, this. I hope that you don't find it overwhelming. I just got on a roll and kept going, as you do. But as I said, you might want to break it down to just doing the postcards, or one of the postcards, whatever floats your boat. So once I've got all the fussy cut pieces on in the background there, I decide that I will use some of the fussy cut baubles, which I've also printed out at 2 to a page, so they're smaller, just to decorate a little more to finish off these postcards. Rubbed out my gel pens afterwards and thought it would be nice just to add a bit of shimmer and glimmer to my baubles. So again, really subtle. I didn't really colour in whole areas, I just did little bits and pieces. I've got this lovely cream fabric and I've decided to use this to join all my postcards together to make my postcard book. Note, I haven't stuck the background onto the front piece of the postcard. I'll be doing that during this process. So I've got a background there. It would be a blue background. And the blue backgrounds I'll be putting on upside down. It'll make sense as I go. I just stick the card on about half of the fabric strip. And I do this on both of the long edges there. One edge of the fabric will be to adhere it to our envelope. And then the other piece will be to adhere it to our next postcard. So the back side's going to be blue and the front's going to be the red and green style postcards here. So now we stick the red front of a postcard on the blue back of a postcard. So the red will be upright and the blue background will be upside down. And as I said, it will make more sense as I go. I'm probably not explaining it very well. It's late. So you just try to match them up quite nicely there, quite evenly. Now I've got the next front of the postcard, which is a blue one. It'll be going on upside down-ish. Now I'm folding it over on top of the other one. That way I can make sure that it's going on straight. I can also make sure there's enough room with my hinge there. If I fold the hinge over on top of it, it leaves the right amount of gap between them so you can fold them up nice and neatly. So you can see here why I've got the blue ones upside down and the red ones up the right way. When it's stuck into the envelope, you'll be flipping it up to see the blue ones, and then they will appear the right way up. So now I'm going to put one of the, I think it's the red background, as a background to a blue postcard. And again, it seems weird because the picture's up one way and then the background is up the other way. But as I said, when you stick it into the envelope, you will see why. It took me forever to try and get my head around making this. Yeah, I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed today. Oh, and as you can see, I made a massive boo-boo there because I stuck the background on and I didn't remember to stick the next hinge on for the next postcard. So I learned from my mistake. So I was fortunate enough to be able to rip the card back up and stick my material down. And you wouldn't even be able to notice. I did well. So then I just have to go and re-stick the bits that I have lifted in that process. So yes, do be sure to make sure you put both your hinges on each time before you put your background on. So now we've got the third one there. So I'm doing a picture, then a background, then a picture, then a background, and that's what it will look like on both sides. So here I'm applying the background piece. And we've got the last postcard here. So again, I put it upside down on top of the previous one so that I can fold my hinge over onto it, allowing the appropriate size gap in between to fold it up. Now, before I put the background on this one, I'm adding just a little tab with my material, as this will be our last, it's our fourth postcard here, so it's the last one. So we don't need a hinge there, so I thought I'd just put a little tab there to signify that that's where you pull it down. So now we put our last background on. Now, when I stuck the front and backs together, there was some overhang here and there, so I'm just using my knife there to go along and carefully cut off any overhang that's annoying me. So I do that and then I re-ink those areas. I had to be very careful doing this. Thought I would show you how I went about doing that. Now, apologies, my camera decided to make everything fuzzy. So I now want to start decorating my envelope before we put postcards in. So I am sticking 3 of these sort of journal cards onto my green cardstock, and then I can cut them out. Then I ink around those. I think I'm using green for those. Now I decide that my cardstock looks a bit plain the way it is and it needed something around the edges, so I've grabbed out my Inker Gold which is like a gold acrylic paint, sort of waxy paint. It's a bit dry, so I spray some water on it just to wet it, and then I use my finger just to apply it by rubbing it on. Very messy but fun. So I think that looks a lot more festive. So now we've got to figure out how we're going to attach our postcards inside of our postcard book holder envelope thing. And that's why we left that top tab. So I'm applying my fabric glue along, sorry you can't see it, just dabbing it to get it on the material there. Then figuring out which way I'm meant to be folding it. Now I want to lift my postcards upwards away so we can utilise the back of the envelope there. So I've folded the tab bit over there and then stuck it down. I got that tab that I put on the end stuck in it too, so I had to pull that back out. See, now you can pull it down and you can pull it up as well, which I will give you a better look at that at the end of the video. So now to decorate our envelope more. So when you open it up with this one, I want to make it a pocket in the bottom there. So I applied the glue to the 3 other edges so that I can slip some tags up in the bottom, which when you close it up, that would be in the top, if that makes sense. So this is the back of our envelope, and I've got this journaling spot that I will put on there. Then I've got one that I've backed with the green cardstock that I want to put over the top of our fabric hinge there on the inside. That should help hold our hinge and our postcards in very nicely now. It gives us a bit more journaling space. So now we're onto the front of our little envelope. Again, I want to make this a pocket. It will be a side pocket. So again, just applying the glue to the 3 other sides. And we can stick something in from the left there. It's always the front part that the glue will spurt out everywhere on. You know, the one that people will see the most. So clean that up. So now we're onto the closure for the back. Now, I was really good at measuring on my mat there where the centre of my top circle is. So I can, because if I eyeball it, I never get it centre. And then I punch a hole there, just using some cardboard underneath to make it a bit easier. And I hunted out some brads that I want to use in there. I think I'll go with the Christmas tree. Then I am measuring centre of my flap to where I want to put my closure 3. And again, I will use my awl to punch a hole through that. Then I realised that I didn't cover the top of it, of the flap there. So I've grabbed another journal card that's exactly the same as the one underneath. And you can see I put the flap down on the back of it, so I knew where to cut this one so it matches with the one that's already there when you close the envelope. So stick that on. I like the way that looks. And then I just re-punch the hole through that paper. So I've got some gold cord that I would like to apply to the bottom of my closure here around the brad. I've tied a single knot in it and I'm just pressing it down on the glue that I just put at the base of the brad just to hold it real nicely. Then I tie another knot so there's a double knot holding it. And just trim it off. Now I'm applying glue to the rest of the bottom of the circle there so we can stick that to the top flap there. Then apply some pressure to squeeze it down because it's a bit lumpy under there with the cord. I want to make it as flat as possible. Then we can flatten out our brad prongs. I've got the cord there coming out of the bottom, and I cut enough cord to wrap around my envelope twice. Then I want to cover the flap underneath there. I want to cover over the brad prongs. So I've got another piece of the journal card, and again I lay the flap down so I can figure out how much I want to cut. And that will cover over our brad. But firstly, I grab a bit of my washi tape, just some glue to make sure it sticks down over the top of the brad prongs, so hopefully they won't cut through the paper, because they can be a bit sharp and bumpy. Grab this little piece which is out of the, I think it's the cover and contents page. Little label that has Christmas Cottage on it, which is the story that we are doing this week. Again, sorry for the blurriness here. So I've got a set of Christmas stamps. I think they're Kaiser Craft ones, and I've got this one that says December the 25th. I want to stamp that on this section, but I didn't really think very well, you know, that when you lift up the flap, it's not going to be the whole stamp. So I re-stamped it over the top. Thankfully, I got it in the right spot. Then I'm stamping ho, ho, ho there. And then on the inside under flap there, I decided to stamp Christmas Memory. So here is my finished postcard book. I had so much fun making this. As you saw, I couldn't sort of stop. There was so much more that I could have done to decorate this and that, but the video would never get up. It's getting late the night before it's due up, so I must get it done. So that's the front there. Now I went on and finished embellishing it off camera, or else the video would get too long. I thought it was mainly important that I showed you how I made the book and the postcards. The embellishment is something that you can have fun with yourselves. So I had this stamp. Wasn't even in a Christmas set, but it looks real Christmassy to me. It looks like the Christmas train bringing the prezzies. I stuck the prezzies from the kit in there. I did size that down. Stamped Christmas wish list. So this is the letter to Santa that the kids wrote or could write in while they were bored staying at the family friend's house. Lots and lots of fun to make. So this is a side pocket at the front here, and I use this card, and this is Ruby and Alistair, who are the kids in the story. And then I backed these with freebie papers from the members website. Just added the lace. Now it's a tight fit this is, but it does go in. I'll worry about putting it in further afterwards. And then on the back we've got our closure, and I found this awesome Christmas tree brad which I liked. Did the bit of stamping and got the label that says Christmas at the Cottage, which is the story for this week for their collaborators. I love these journal cards too because they just add so much colour, and I used the baubles, of course, to make my closure there, and then attached this cord to close it with. So if you lift that up, I stamped Christmas Memory in there. A little bit lumpy from the brad, but that's all right. Really liked using the brad. And I used some of the stars from the embellishments that I sized down. You open that up and we've got this journal card. So there's a fair bit of writing space in this really. Use some more embellishments there. And then I grabbed two of the tags, which I also sized down, and they slip in this bottom pocket. And they're Christmas cottages, and I backed them again onto some of the freebie paper. pop those back in. Just used some of my Christmas ribbon there. And then under our postcards, if you flip them up like that, we've got some journaling space there, which is lovely. So heaps of writing room, really. So here's the first one of our shaker postcards. And things do sort of move. In the end, they all get stuck in one corner or whatever, but if you shake it up a bit, they start moving around. But I love the way they look. I'll try and give you a better look. You'll be able to see better in the photo. I'll try and get a decent photo of it, but you can see a lot of the balls around the place in the sequins. So if you flip it upwards, you get the 4 postcard pieces. So the 2 shaker postcards. There's our other one there with the stars and the balls. And you can see the snow a bit too that I did with the embossing. And then we've got our writing spots there as well with the backgrounds. So it'd go like that. And then we've got our tabs so you know that you can flip it down that way. And then we've got this side. And again, you'll probably see better if I do a photograph afterwards, but we've got the glistening on the baubles, and then I've just layered these up a bit, so they add a little bit of dimension. Don't want to add too much though, or else it would never fit in my little holder. And there's the other one there, and you can see the transparency on the frames. So that was so much fun. So a massive, massive thank you to Tracie and Justin for all the hard work they put into the kit. Such a fun idea, and I know that so many people really have a ball doing the Christmas collaboration. Us creators who are involved in it, but also the people who watch and like to do their December dailies or follow along with the projects. Some people do find this time of the year really hard, and having something fun like this to do can just make such a difference for people. I really appreciate being a part of this collaboration. I find it so much fun, and it's really cool to see what everyone else makes and how they interpret the story and the kit as well. So do make sure you go along and check everyone out. All the links will be down below for you. And most of all, I hope whatever you do, you have a wonderful festive season. Whether you celebrate or not, make sure you stay safe, relax, and enjoy yourself. And eat lots, that's what I usually do. So do take care of yourselves, be good, and I will see you again soon. Bye.